Welcome to the Vocation of Business Leader podcast. I'm Greg Balster. Here, we explore how Catholic leaders let Christ and the teachings of the church he founded guide their work, integrating faith and business. Each episode offers inspiring stories to help you live an undivided life. Let's meet our guest, John Cannon, founder of Cent Ventures. Hey, John.
Hey, Greg. Thanks for having me. Good to be here.
You bet. Hey, will you tell us a little bit about yourself?
Sure. Well, I live in the Washington, D.C. area. I grew up in Alabama, Birmingham, Alabama. Was blessed to go to Notre Dame for undergrad and have a lot of great academic and professional opportunities. Did masters in England uh, uh, and then went to business school at Harvard and worked in investment banking. That's about the professional side. And then, like, I guess spiritually and personally, I'd grown up Catholic, but it wasn't very integrated into my life. Growing up, it's kind of something, go to church on Sunday, and that's about it. And as I went along, kind of became less and less engaged with my faith and started getting into kind of just chasing success and getting the right jobs and that sort of thing. And then eventually it was like, had more time on my hands and started doing partying at night. And so it was kind of work hard, play hard lifestyle. It's not probably in a very healthy place, but about my mid-20s. And I think God was just really merciful with me. I had a very intense spiritual experience around this time and just changed everything for me. And entering religious life, I was with the Carmelites, working contemplative order in the church for, almost 7 years. Loved it. I was very happy there. And eventually I felt like God was leading me to kind of dig up some of those very active gifts and experiences I had, and felt drawn to serve Catholic founders and entrepreneurial leaders after studying the saints. And I saw kind of an entrepreneurial streak in them and wanted to build up leaders like that today. And so ended up starting a group called Cent, which seeks to serve and build up Catholic entrepreneurial leaders in community and give them practical resources to have great businesses, but also become saints in the journey. And so it's been my mission for the past several years. And my favorite things to do are go to church and pray and go running.
That's good.
Yeah.
That's good. So you grew up in Alabama, and which is in the heart of the Bible Belt. And did you go to EWTN ever, or
Yeah, actually, my dad was really devout guy, and he would take us there to play and go visit the chapel. And he knew Mother Angelica a little bit. And
Mhm.
apparently, I met her a little bit when I was a kid. I don't really remember, but did spend a little bit of time there actually.
So you went to Notre Dame, and you got 2 degrees
Yeah,
in
I did your
political
homework.
science and
Yeah,
finance. So
that's
that takes some dedication. So what was the plan? Political science and finance.
yeah. I worked very hard in college. Did 2 degrees in 4 years and a lot of other stuff. It was a busy period in my life, but I was really interested in at that time in politics, and kind of wanted to make a difference and impact in the world, and kind of saw like policy and politics as a way to do that. And so actually ended up working in education policy and then working in politics after college back in my home state of Alabama for a little bit. So that was kind of the trajectory for a while, and kind of lost. Yeah, things changed along the way, but yeah, that was kind of the interest at the time.
Then when did you go to Harvard?
Went to Harvard for business school, so did an MBA there, and that was about 3 years after college. Went there, so worked in Alabama in politics and policy for a couple of years, and then did a master's in England for a year, and then went to business school. And I became interested in along the way. I think I saw how people from business backgrounds were like they could move a lot faster. We're often the ones even in government that were getting more things done.
Mhm.
I always had kind of an entrepreneurial streak. I started an organization in college, so you know, kind of I was in academia in England. It was almost like a research track for my master's was feeding into a doctorate, and it wasn't me like sitting in dusty libraries. I was too active. I wanted to create things and build things, and so business just seemed like a better fit. And so I went to business school and then started more business stuff afterwards, and I found kind of more of a fit for me in that pathway.
Mhm. Then on your LinkedIn, you were talking about that after starting your management consulting practice, I had a major conversion experience, an encounter with God. So, what was going on in your life?
Good question. I think some of the context for that was, and I kind of alluded to this, I guess, in the early intro. I, uh, you know, kind of I worked very hard, but I was kind of chasing success too. Kind of resume building and uh, being successful, kind of from an external perspective. Then I also started like kind of in business school. You have more time on your hands, at least at Harvard, because you don't really have grades. So it's a very social environment. You start kind of going out more and doing more social things, and that kind of snowballs, and going out 3 nights a week, then 5 nights a week, then 6 nights a week, and develop certain habits around partying and that sort of thing that are not very healthy overall. And and so that became kind of a path, a trajectory for me, and so I was not in a very like healthy space psychologically, spiritually, emotionally, I would say, and kind of working hard during the day, partying at night, repeating the cycle day after day. I talked about my dad a little bit, was a very devout man of prayer, went to mass every day. Like, he walked the walk. He's one of the holiest men I've ever known. And he was in a really bad car accident around that time, and when I was in business school, he almost died, and he broke his back, and like his scalp ended up getting peeled off. He was on the pavement. Anyways, in the ICU, and they did kind of emergency surgery on his back to repair it. He was in a lot of pain, but I would go visit him. I remember like nurses or other people would come in and check on him, and instead of being like, "Hey, fix my problems," he would smile, and he would ask them about their family, about their kids, and he was just very other focused despite his own suffering. And it made a big impression on me, seeing that, like seeing someone that was completely broken but still smiling and focused on other people and their well-being. I was like, man, how does he do that? And I was thinking about that one day when I had this kind of spiritual experience that was almost like, I mean, you see, kind of hard to communicate, and I don't really fully understand it myself, to be honest with you. But it was almost like the veil was peeled back a little bit, and like I could just see, like, everything. After this experience, I was like, I know God exists, and I know I'm a sinner, and He wants me to change. And it was over. I mean, literally, it was so powerful. Overnight, I went from reading just business stuff to just tearing through spiritual books. Like, I didn't read anything spiritual hardly before, and then that was all I read afterwards, 'cause it was that powerful and real. So God can change things like that. If yeah, just got to give him a little bit of a chance. And I guess I was giving him a chance. I didn't realize it.
Yeah. So, do you have any siblings?
I do have a brother and a sister.
Okay. So, what did they think when you were going that this change?
Good question. We were kind of all doing our own things, and so I don't know how much. And I'm a very private person. I guess I've always been, and so I don't know how much I talked about things. I think that's a good question. Like, I'm trying to remember back in the archives, like how I was communicating it, or I think overall they were like, because it was a positive change for me, even from like people who were not my brother and sister are not practicing faith per se, but even from like this, non-faith perspective, I think people would notice like a positive change. I mean, I was living healthier, was going to bed at normal times. I was, more responsible. I cared more about others. I mean, there were a lot of fruits, I think, from that spiritual journey. So I think it was, my relationships with them, I think, improved. So I think the real kind of scratching the head that happened for a lot of people was when I went from, you know, working in investment banking, whatever, to entering a monastery without, and just cutting off. I didn't have internet or cell phone. That was the big surprise for a lot of people, I think. I think a lot of people I found that most people were very supportive of that. They were like, that's awesome. That's great. I don't understand it, but that's great.
Yeah. Yeah. So, how did you discern to first pursue I guess, a religious
Yeah.
life? And then how did you discern the Carmelites?
Yeah. Good questions. I mean, at the time it was pulling at me so intensely. I remember thinking at one point, I can see no other path for my life than to go to a monastery or a cave somewhere or something like that. I felt like God was pulling me so hard to just be with him, to go into the desert and to leave things behind and just be alone with him. And I yearned for that so badly. It was this like almost like a deep intimate calling or pulling to this relationship and with him. And it was very powerful, and it was almost all consuming for me. And so um, it was the only thing I could do, really. Uh, I mean, if I was kind of faithful to where I felt like I was being led. And so, and then, but I did discern, I visited different communities and, prayed a lot about it and got a lot of guidance and counsel. And the Carmelites were just very, like, the, when I was reading a lot of spirituality, I was very drawn to more of the mystical tradition in the church, and started reading the primary text, the books, St. John of the Cross and Teresa of Avila, and was just very drawn to there. I was like, felt like they were speaking my language, or maybe they were putting words and structure and kind of a pathway to what I was sensing and feeling, and it just resonated so deeply. And I went and started visiting different communities, and then one of the Carmelite communities I visited, it just felt like a family. They were deeply spiritual, but also down to earth and normal. And I was like, I could see myself here. And so kind of took that step. And it's kind of nice in religious life. You don't have to you don't have to sign up for the whole hog all at once. You can kind of try it out. I mean, there are a lot of steps to trying it out. It's a pretty rigorous application process, but you can go as a postulant and, see how it goes. So I did that and ended up fitting well, and then stayed for quite a while.
Yeah. So you were in California, Oregon, and then Uganda. So
Right.
that's a big change. So how long were you in Uganda, and what was that like?
Yeah, Uganda it was actually kind of short. They had a mission in Uganda. And so in the summers when we were in seminary, we'd get assigned to different houses so that we could experience them. So, one summer I'd be in a parish, one I was in a retreat center, um, one I was in like a more remote monastery, and then this assignment was at the mission. So I was there for a summer, but it was great. I loved it there. It was some of those joyful people I've ever met in Uganda. It was really, yeah, it was really, yeah, it was a great grace to be there, and yeah, to pray and do some mission work. Let them do mission work on me more than anything else, probably.
Uh-huh. Yeah. Yeah. So as you were discerning to stay in, what was the what were you experiencing near the end?
Yeah, discernment's interesting. You get a lot of questions around discernment, and because we all wrestle with making big decisions, and they're hard. And St. Paul says we walk by faith, not by sight. We never see fully. We never see clearly, completely. And so there's an element of faith to things. St. Ignatius of Loyola offers some great principles for discernment, which I think are helpful. And yeah, I think there's two things to that. One, I grew a lot in the Carmelites, and I loved it overall, and was very happy there. And they were like, they still are, like, a lot of them, like brothers to me. So it was a great gift. But I never had, when I was there, I never had like a deep sense of peace. That was where I was supposed to be for life. I never had that, and so I prayed a lot about that, and I would go to spiritual direction and talk about that. But at the same time, things were good, and I didn't feel drawn to make a change. Like, it wasn't like, oh no, I'm supposed to be over here. I didn't feel that. It was like good. So I kind of was patient with it, and I was like, Lord, you're going to show me in due time where you want me to be, and maybe it is here. And you make that more clear. Maybe it's somewhere else. So I just try to be faithful to what every day, each day, wake up and try to be faithful to the horarium, to things that were assigned to me, my duties, my way of life. Trust that God would show me in due time. I mentioned my dad. 6 years in, he became very sick and died very, very, not suddenly, but it was within 2 months of his diagnosis. And that was the hardest thing I've ever gone through in my life. A lot of trauma, emotionally, grief. It was really tough because we were very close. He was the closest demonstration of human love I've encountered. After that, it was like, I mean, I think going through really difficult stuff and trauma, things can change internally. It was it's hard to explain, but like there was this like, I don't know, all the like active stuff I'd done before. I'd started organizations, I worked in politics and banking and all these things, like kind of that energy came back somehow. And I became almost obsessed, like learning about how the church had renewed in the past. And I was sort of like, maybe it was I don't know, subconsciously channeling all this grief and all, whatever. it wasn't conscious. It was just like, this is all happening. And I ended up just like pouring through the lives of saints and founders. And I started having all these ideas. It was like a very creative period. I started understanding like artists that go, that are like just tortured and they have this beautiful art. Like I started to understand that because that's like
Mhm.
almost what was going on in me. And I started having all these ideas. Um, and so like, and then it really felt that I was drawn to be more active in things and pursue that. And so I try to be, you asked about discernment. I try to be very patient with that. I spent about a year and a half after this kind of these things happening to discern not continuing. I was very transparent with my superiors and my spiritual director and like I tried to do everything right as best as I could. And so and these things are very consistent. And so discern to not continue. And the formal mechanism for that was you maybe TMI, or you make what's called simple vows. You make vows for a year at a time, poverty, chastity, and obedience. And you renew them each year. And then you're moving towards what's called solemn vows, where you make vows for life, which is kind of the equivalent of marriage.
Mm.
And I was in simple vows. So I still could leave, but you, my vows were up for renewal. And I renewed them once and then discerned to not renew them. I renewed them once after these things started changing within me. And then I discerned the second time not to renew them. By default is no longer in the community. So it was a very kind of, I think, it was the kind of the right way to go about it, instead of just like leaving in the cover of night or something like that. So I was very patient with it, spent a lot of extra time with it, but really felt that that's where God was leading me. And yeah, hardest thing I ever did was leave. It was a lot harder to leave than dinner, but I felt like it was where God was leading me. So
Yeah. So did you come up with the idea of scent while you were there or after you left?
good question. Probably a little of both. It was those. It was something around entrepreneurship for the faith. In the faith was going on during that time. I mean, these were ideas, and this was kind of on my heart while I was there. I didn't have a crystallization of like the strategy. There were a lot of ideas around it, like starting an accelerator, like raising a fund, like a community. Like there were all these ideas, and I didn't know necessarily the path, but I felt very drawn to do something related to that. And then the strategy and how the organization evolved, that kind of evolved more after I left, but like the name came to me on a retreat I was doing, and a lot of like the kind of spirituality and the guts of it was kind of going on before I just turned out.
So when you left, how did the process happen? So what year was it that you left?
Left in end of 2019.
Okay.
Yeah,
So perfect time to start something.
I know. We started like 2 months before COVID. Yeah, great. It was great.
Yeah. So tell me about the first the first months of starting up Scent.
Yeah. Yeah.
For the listeners who are not aware of Scent Ventures,
Sure. Share a little about it.
yeah.
Sure. Scent is the idea behind Scent is like, so I'll do a couple connecting dots. So I kind of saw in leaders so I did this leadership study on founders in church history who led new movements, started new orders. People like Ignatius of Loyola, Saint Benedict, Mother Teresa. So people have had tremendous outsized impact in renewing faith and impacting society over centuries. It's amazing. What are their characteristics? And so this is kind of the question I was very compelled by. What are the characteristics of these leaders? I mean, and they're holy, they're deeply spiritual. There are other things too, but they're also very entrepreneurial. They find needs around them and they work to address those needs in their midst. And it's that core of entrepreneurship that I became very compelled by. And it's like, well, there's entrepreneur, there's ecosystems to support entrepreneurs in every sector of the economy, but there's almost nothing in the Catholic space. Yet this is how
Yeah.
our faith is renewed, and entrepreneurs build great things for society. They can build great things. You have to build terrible things, but they can build great things for society and culture. And so is there a way of supporting and building up Catholic entrepreneurial leaders? Because I think they can be leverage points for a lot of great good. And so that became the focus of it. And so when I just turned out, I just started trying to, I mean, really, I didn't know the first move in that. I kind of had this idea like something was needed here, but I didn't know the first move in it. And so, um, you know, began just talking to a lot of these founders, like, what are your biggest needs and pain points and challenges? And what's been most helpful for you. And so, kind of discovered that a lot of them they were hungry for community of other people like them. It's hard to find that. They wanted practical support in building their faith into things. And they also wanted like practical resources like mentorship and access to kind of, capital resources and things like that. I started by one of the founders I talked to. He asked him what was the most helpful thing for him, and he said he has a community of other entrepreneurs that he meets with regularly. They just talk about problems they're facing and they help each other. And I was like, are they faith based or Catholic? He's like, no. I'm like, oh, what if you had one? Like, can you talk about your faith in those groups? He's like, no, they won't understand it. But he was really devout. And I was like, what if you had a group where you could talk about faith? He's like, that would be amazing. And so that's how we started, by it's really building these kind of like mastermind groups for really high level Catholic founders, and giving them a process to work together and collaborate and also deepen their faith. And it was really powerful. And so we kind of expanded it. That was kind of the starting point. And then we started doing conferences and different types of events. And, we have like a member platform and help people find mentors. And, now we do some investing. So there's a lot of things that have been kind of bolted onto that, but that was kind of the kernel at the beginning.
How many summits? So what number was Fort Worth?
Yeah, we've done, that was our third conference. Yeah, our third summit. We've done several other events and conferences, but our summit is like our main annual kind of gathering. And we had maybe 400 founders, CEOs, investors that came in for that this past year. So it's been cool to see it grow, and a lot of hunger and interest for this type of community.
I have to tell you, it was the most, I've been to many conferences, but that was the most amazing conference.
Wow.
It was, so many people were so positive and giving and humble and vulnerable. So many people were just blown away, and me with them. And so, yeah, it was fantastic.
Yeah. I mean, the Holy Spirit that's the Holy Spirit working. So, he can do those things. So,
Yeah. So when you coach founders and so you do some coaching and stuff like that, are there any common denominators that you see that needs to be addressed first when you start working with someone?
Yeah, good question. I mean, what like a framework that I like to think about is like, I think for a lot of people that are starting companies and organizations, they really want to make same desire I had coming out of college. I want to make an impact, and let's go to politics. And it's like, start a company, you want to build something great, and you want to leave a lasting legacy, and you want to maybe make money. I mean, there's a lot of but there's just a big idea there. And so, and that's good. That's a good thing. Also, it's like we also have to order the house right. Like, that's like an outer ring of things, actually. And that's not the core thing. The core thing is your relationship with God, your prayer life, the health of your soul, because that's going to radiate through everything else, and it's going to amplify it. You get that right, everything else is going to flow. So, what is your prayer life? How does your prayer life look? Do you have some spiritual reading, or are you going to confession? Like, these things at the core, right? And it's going to echo from there. You're going to be a better leader for it. And you're going to be, your company is going to be more healthy. And in your family too, like, you have to order, if you have a vocation, if vocation is marriage and family, like, that's got to fit in. You have to have a game plan for that, right? We're not just, I won't name names in the secular space, but we're not just like working all the time and doing whatever we want on the side, right? And so we have to think about that very carefully and pray about that and have goals around it, and then it's our company and the broader society, right? So we have to keep that ordering in perspective. And I think that, and then building on that, and then thinking about within our company, like, how do we lead in this way? And it's actually going to flow more organically and natural than like if I script and design some, master plan around like this Catholic company or whatever. It's going to be so organic and natural because, just like you saw at the conference, the Holy Spirit's going to be working through it. And he's going to take care of all of the hard things for us.
Yeah. So so you currently have this monk mindset.
Yeah.
So tell us about that.
Yeah. I was in the monastery for a long time, and just turned out of the monastery, and I found that a lot of my kind of secular friends, my Catholic friends too, but my secular friends from like business school and other places, they were very interested in that. I was surprised. Like, they were like, "Whoa, what was it like at the monastery? Tell me
Mhm.
more. Do you have advice for me in this situation?" And just started to see that there's a great interest in meditation and mindfulness, and people find monks kind of intriguing, but most people don't know that there's a 2,000-year history of monasticism within Christianity that informs how to live well, how to flourish, and live a good life. And but it's all there, and it's not that different. I mean, it is radically different from like lay life and secular life, but the basic building blocks are the same. It's the basic building blocks. It's what you're designed, how God's designed us as humans. He wants us to pray, he wants us to be in community, he wants us to work hard. Like these are the same things. I had, the idea of like trying to basically kind of take the principles and actionable things of the monastic tradition and just try to make it accessible and actionable to a much broader audience. People that are hungry for this growth and transformation. Maybe they're not as open to, maybe they are open to Catholicism, but maybe they have barriers to that, or who knows. But like kind of lifting out all those principles and those things that people can do in their life and translate it a little bit and make it kind of easier for people to put it in practice in their lives, maybe in bite-sized ways. So right now it's kind of a media platform. We do a lot of social media. I have a newsletter. It's a weekly newsletter. It's like 3 minutes, and it gives you something actionable you can do that week to implement one of these practices in your life. So people really love it. It's grown a lot. So monkmindset.com. I'll plug, check it out.
Yeah, yeah. I'll put all that in the notes. Um, I was reading through the How to Schedule Like a Monk, and you're talking about the importance of boundaries. Could you just talk a little bit about that?
Yeah, can you remind me the context of that?
So it was the the importance of boundaries in your work life, and yeah,
Yep, got it. Yeah, I'll tell a story. Like, so before entering the Carmelites, I spent a month in Calcutta volunteering with the Missionaries of Charities, the order Mother Teresa founded. Um, and I kind of before I went there, I was like, man, these sisters, they do some of the hardest work in the world, right? They take care of the poorest of the poor. They don't get paid anything. They live very simply, radically simply. And I was like, yeah, these sisters, they just like work with the poor, then they pray, and that's it. Like, and they're just working all the time. It's kind of the idea I had when I went over there. They actually only work about 7 hours a day, and they have several hours a day for prayer, broken out through the day. When they come, they have a work block in the morning for like 3 hours, and they come back and they have lunch, and they come back. They come back at a certain time. They're all there. If someone's like, "Hey, I need help," they're like, "I'm sorry, I can't help you right now. I have to go back to the monastery." And they have their meal and they have some recreation time together. They can nap, then they come up, they have tea, and then they'll go back to the different houses to work for maybe 2:30, 3 p.m. or so for a couple 3 hours. They it's I saw that there, and this is my experience in religious life too. It's that they do some of the hardest work in the world, but they're able to do it for decades because they have these boundaries in place between different aspects of their life that allow them to flourish. So the work is intense and focused. So when they're at work, they're really focused in their work and they're very present to it. And but there's a boundary there, and for community, they also need community. They need those relationships and community because God's designed us that way. We need time for rest and recovery, especially if we have intense labor. We need time for prayer, and they have that scheduled in, and they're hard boundaries on it. So I think and that's been my experience in religious life. Now, in lay life, if you have a family, like your boundaries might have to be a little more porous and flexible. You know what I mean? If your kids are like, "Hey, Dad," and you just play with me, you're like, "I got to go to prayer, son." But you got to find a way to carve it in and figure it out, right? So we all need those. One of the books one of the only secular books I read that was assigned in formation in religious life was the book called Boundaries, actually.
okay,
Uh, which is it's written by Christian authors, but it's a bestseller. It's kind of I think it's where the word kind of like became popular, but it's about like these boundaries into different aspects of your life. And yeah, we could riff on that for a long time, but I mean, it is important to have different categories of of your life and have boundaries to make sure those buckets are filled. And the cool thing about that is that they start spilling the fruits of that spill over to other aspects. If we have healthy community relationships, we feel bad. I mean, you have a great conversation with an old friend, or when you're, able to just spend quality time with your family. you're more alive because of that. And that
Mhm.
spills into your professional relationships. It spills into your prayer life. You get prayer, you're more alive for that. It's been spills over to other things. So it creates this kind of virtual flywheel for life, which is cool.
And I think tied to that was you said when you work, or something to that
Yeah,
extent.
yeah,
So
yeah.
how do you do that in a professional setting to be able to get the intense work done in a because everyone's saying I'm so busy, I'm working late, and
Yeah. Well, one, I mean, I don't pretend to be. I mean, you know, I'm still a beginner at all these things, and I get distracted, and you know, try and cut corners sometimes. So, I mean, I don't want to sit here being a hypocrite. But one of the cool things in the monastery is like, I remember we'd have dedicated work blocks in the morning, and because you only have that amount of time, I got 2.5 hours, whatever, in the morning to do this work. And I gotta usually it's more manual stuff. I was like mopping floors or like cleaning stuff or whatever. But I knew I had to get it done that time. So it would kind of force me to figure out a way to get it done in that time. You know what I mean? And most professional people we have that experience where it's like the 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 work that you have to do is gonna fill the slot that you have. I think there's like some principle for that or name for that. I can't remember what it is, but you know, it's gonna we have an hour for it. We're gonna get it done in an hour, right? Deadlines are super helpful. And so being able, so being focused and present and during our work periods and to stay working is I think is good not only from like a kind of productivity standpoint, but also like if there's a justice component to it also. Like if you have an employer or your or employees, like being able to work and stay focused during that time and use that time well for the glory of God, and also for investors, maybe investors are investing in you, or your employee working for someone to give them their due justice at that time. They're paying you for that, for the work during that time. You owe that to them in many ways. And so like continuing to find ways of growing in that. And as humans, it's never going to be perfect, right? And it's never going to be like the most optimal work session ever. We're, to do our best and find ways to continue to improve how we're doing that. So practically speaking, what does that look like? I mean, I think trying to, I mean, a lot of people probably know this already. I'm not know how revolutionary this will be, but like in the mornings, I think most people focus better. So like finding deep work blocks and periods and carving out special time for that, and more collaborative work in the afternoons, and um, being able to take breaks. Set goals around yourself for an hour and every hour and a half or something like that. Do a 5-minute break, go do some spiritual reading, go for a step outside. Like these actually help you to work better, more focused. Um, I think and then all the little things outside of it, like getting the right sleep, and beginning a set, to begin just a session with a quick prayer, whether it's like "Come Holy Spirit" or the name of the cross, sign of the cross, and like God's gonna then help direct that uh, to better completion than you ever can. I think there are a lot of things that we can do, I mean, our diet affects us and how focused you are and like the energy levels you have, and like there are a lot of ascetic practices that I think we can do that actually help us stay focused and work and to do it well. Turning off notifications. Yeah, there's a lot. We could talk all day about that stuff, but like, yeah, I think generally a lot of secular resources on how to do that well that we don't need to go into here. But that's I think it's spiritually it's actually very important.
yeah. What advice would you have for a professional that was in your position that's working hard all the time and they don't have that encounter, but they want to have an encounter. They want to live their life undivided. What advice would you have for someone to live an undivided life?
Yeah, 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 and so uh, these like we talked about like this kind of spiritual experience I had before, and like it's not like I have those all the time.
Yeah, yeah.
I don't have those all the time, and so like and it's St. John of the Cross advises like not to seek mystical experiences or intense, like just trusting in God. And I think the most important thing and the way God's gonna like the more normal way of Him working with us that even the mystics advise is like showing up for prayer, showing up for prayer, and like to speak to business leaders, like I often say, like prayer is the highest ROI activity you can do. Prayer is the highest ROI, return on investment activity that you can do. for your time. And so if you're spending 30 minutes a day in prayer, that is going to be the most fruitful 30 minutes you can spend of your whole day. I don't care what business meeting you have, what, you know, client you're building for, whatever it is, like that's going to be the most fruitful time because you're going to be allowing that space where God's going to be coming in and he's going to leverage and take everything else to the next level. And so finding that time to take daily time for prayer. And a lot of the saints say at least 20, 30 minutes a day, at least
Yeah.
20 30 minutes a day, especially for silent prayer, mental prayer, Lectio Divina, or going to mass if you have that, if you have that option. And he's gonna work a lot of fruit from that. That's I can't remember the original question, but that's
Yeah. To live an undivided life. I mean, it
yeah,
starts with your relationship with God, and everything. Once that's in order, then other things fall into place.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, and it can seem daunting or hard, or you don't see the results of it,
Mm-hmm.
and so it's like, okay, well, do 5 minutes and just try it and trust. Do 5 minutes per week. I mean, I've shared this with people that like people that are I thought had that where people are praying there, and I they do a lot of faith based stuff, and they're like, I talked to them like, I don't actually pray that much. I'm like, yeah, we should talk about this, and they've come back to me and like, I tried it for a month, 30 minutes a day for prayer, and it changed my life. It changed my life, like literally. And so multiple people have told me that. And so it's like, give that a shot. That is the easiest way to change your life. And also another challenge with it is like, I think finding a good place to have that prayer, like have a ritual around it. Here's the place I go to for prayer. Ideally, like it's a chapel or something where you can like go and there's a sacred space, but maybe it's too far, like time logistics don't work. The backyard. My dad would often pray on our porch that was like kind of nestled in the woods. And so he wouldn't really do work there. That was the prayer spot, and so have that kind of sacred space that you can go to. And there's a ritual around like, I go here for prayer, maybe it takes 10 or 15 minutes to get to, and that's good.
Yeah. Um, where can people go to find out more about you and your work?
Yeah, there's a few so if you're interested in Send, if you're an entrepreneur or interested in starting a company one day or being, leadership with a company, you really care about your faith, check out Sent. The website sentventures.com. As a community, we have conferences and community resources for leaders like that. Interested in kind of building more monastic practices in your life, which really is for anyone. Check out Monk Mindset. It's monkmindset.com. Yeah, those are we have a small investing community. So if you want to do angel investing, if you're an accredited investor and interested in investing in companies that advance Catholic values, it's catholicangels.co. A little harder website, catholicangels.co. But those are some resources that you can check out for ways to plug in.
Awesome. Is there anything that I didn't ask you that you'd like to talk about?
Good question. I don't know. I think, yeah, I think, regardless of where you are or who you are, God is deeply, deeply interested in having a very intimate and powerful relationship with you. And he wants you to draw close to him and to remain in him and to allow him to love you. And a lot of us have so many wounds from whether it's childhood or broken relationships or professional kind of resentment and envy, jealousy, addiction. We struggle with all these things. And taking that time daily for going to the Father, going to Jesus, and allowing them to work on us and heal those things is going to be what gives us the peace, the consolation, the strength, the courage, all the things that we are so hungry and desperate for. So just take that. Yeah, I just encourage people to take that time for prayer. And if there's a wound or pain, to bring it to God in confession, to allow those things to be healed.
Absolutely. Thank you so much, John. That was awesome. Um, thank you so much for your time.
Thanks for having me. Yeah, it's a
Yeah,
blessing.
and anyone listening, I highly recommend Sent Ventures, and the tagline. It's you feel too Catholic for your business friends, but too driven for your Catholic friends. Was boom, right, hit me
Yeah,
right in the heart. Yeah, and so That's absolutely. And your monk mindset is really good. So highly recommend that. So thank you so much for your time, John.
Thanks
Really
for having
appreciate
me.
it.
Yeah, great to see you.
Thank you for joining us today's episode of the Vocation of the Business Leader podcast. We hope you found inspiration as we explore the powerful union of faith and business. If you enjoyed this episode, please subscribe, share it, leave a review. Until next time, may God guide your work and help you witness his love in all you do. God bless.